Let's drop right into the absolute madness of this Wednesday, April 15th situation, because the confrontation between Willow and Nina is something we need to dissect immediately. I am still reeling from the sheer audacity of what is unfolding. Nina is standing there, completely blindsided, listening to her own daughter confess to an atrocity that borders on the unthinkable. We are talking about Drew's condition. Up until this very moment, everyone, Nina, the doctors, the entire town has been operating under the heartbreaking assumption that Drew was trapped in his own body by locked-in syndrome. But the truth is so much darker, and I feel like it completely rewrites who Willow is as a character. Willow has been systematically, intentionally injecting Drew with chemical restraints to keep him paralyzed. Let's pause and really think about the sheer psychological terror of that. Medically speaking, locked-in syndrome is a catastrophic neurological condition where a patient is fully aware and awake but completely paralyzed, save for maybe their eyes. It is often caused by a stroke in the brainstem. But what Willow's doing is inducing this state artificially. To do this, she would have to be using powerful neuromuscular blocking agents, the kind of paralytics used during major surgeries to stop a patient's muscles from twitching, including their diaphragm, which is why patients on these drugs usually need ventilators. If Drew is breathing on his own but unable to move, she is playing an incredibly dangerous, highly calculated game of chemical dosage. If she gives him a fraction of a milligram too much, he stops breathing and dies. If she stops the injections, the drugs metabolize out of his system and his motor functions return. He would recover. He could walk again. In my opinion, this crosses the line from a desperate soapy scheme into pure, unadulterated medical abuse. It's akin to a horrific variation of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where a caretaker artificially fabricates or induces illness in someone under their care to maintain control. I think we are watching the total psychological collapse of Willow. How did the sweet, moralistic schoolteacher become a sociopath willing to torture a man by trapping him inside his own paralyzed flesh? Naturally, Nina is furious. As a mother, finding out your child is capable of such profound cruelty is a soul-shattering realization. I feel like Nina's immediate instinct would be to scream, to call the police, to tear the hospital down to save Drew. But what can she actually do? Her hands are tied by the very toxic love she has for her daughter. I think Nina will swallow her rage and stay silent, because turning Willow in means losing her forever, and Nina's entire existence has been defined by her desperate, clawing need to be a mother to the child she lost. However, this is just my interpretation, but I believe Nina has a breaking point, and Drew isn't it. Valentine is. We know that Willow is setting her sights on a new, incredibly dangerous game, manipulating Valentine's daughter to ensure Valentine gets arrested by Brennan. Valentine is a massive blind spot for Nina. Despite all their toxic history, they share a deep, complex bond. To see Willow use a child, Valentine's child, as a pawn in a twisted chess match with Brennan is where I think Nina's maternal guilt will collide with her inherent sense of loyalty. I could be wrong, but watching a child be manipulated might trigger Nina's deepest traumas regarding her own stolen motherhood. If Willow goes through with destroying Valentine via his daughter, that might be the catalyst that finally forces Nina to blow the whistle on the whole Drew situation. But Willow isn't stupid. She has anticipated her mother's shifting loyalties. As if the drug revelation wasn't enough, Willow drops another bomb. She didn't act alone. Sidwell helped her execute this elaborate, monstrous plan. The inclusion of Sidwell changes the entire power dynamic. It takes this from a domestic crime to a highly organized conspiracy. And then the ultimate betrayal happens. Willow looks her mother in the eye and essentially blackmails her. Willow has framed Nina. I think about the logistics of this framing. How did Willow manage to procure these highly restricted paralytic drugs week after week without raising red flags at the hospital pharmacy? She likely used Nina's name, Nina's money, or Nina's access. There is an agonizingly brilliant Machiavellian logic to Willow's actions here. By fabricating a paper trail that points to Nina as the mastermind or the financier of Drew's torment, Willow has mutually assured destruction. If Nina goes to the cops, Nina goes to prison right alongside her. The tragedy here is palpable. Nina spent her whole life searching for a daughter to love, only to find a monster who would gladly lock her in a cage to save her own skin. Switching gears entirely, I want to unpack the deeply disturbing situation with Brooke Lynn because it highlights a different kind of moral decay. Brooke Lynn hasn't actually forgotten what happened the night Jordan crashed. Not really. Trauma has a funny way of making us suppress things we don't want to face, but the truth is scratching at the back of her mind. Brooke Lynn had a drink, maybe she thought she was fine to drive. But she was speeding, she swerved, and her reckless actions forced Jordan to take evasive maneuvers, resulting in a devastating crash. Legally and ethically, this is a phantom vehicle hit and run. Even if Brooke Lynn's car didn't physically strike Jordan's car, Brooke Lynn's illegal and reckless driving was the proximate cause of the accident. If Jordan hadn't swerved to avoid Brooke Lynn, she would have been hit head-on. As a result, Jordan is fighting for her life, and Brooke Lynn drove away physically unscathed but carrying a secret that should rot her soul. Why is Brooke Lynn burying this? Because of the baby. She and Chase are in the middle of trying to adopt late Delilah's baby girl. In my opinion, Brooke Lynn is using the noble concept of motherhood to justify an utterly depraved act of cowardice. The adoption system is incredibly rigorous, and rightly so. Background checks, character references, home studies, they are all designed to ensure a safe environment for a vulnerable child. If the courts find out Brooke Lynn was involved in a drunk driving hit and run that nearly killed a police commissioner, her chances of adopting that baby drop to absolute zero. She would be deemed an unfit guardian, and she knows it. I feel like Brooke Lynn is telling herself that she is doing a bad thing for a good reason, to give this orphaned baby a loving home. But let's look at the psychology of guilt here. Guilt is corrosive. You cannot build a foundation of love and family on top of the crushed, bleeding body of an innocent woman. Every time Brooke Lynn looks at that baby, she should see Jordan's wrecked car. I think the longer she hides this, the heavier the psychological toll will be, and eventually the paranoia will make her crack. You don't just walk away from destroying someone's life and get to play happy family without the universe demanding a toll. Meanwhile, poor Jordan is laying in a hospital bed, the victim of Brooke Lynn's panicked selfishness. There are positive signs post-surgery, which is a relief, but we need to manage our expectations. Medically speaking, recovering from severe trauma that requires major surgery and induces a comatose or semi-comatose state is an excruciatingly slow process. The brain needs time to reduce swelling, the body needs time to repair massive tissue damage. I could be wrong, but I don't see Jordan popping her eyes open and giving a statement to the PCPD anytime soon. I feel like it will be weeks of agonizing silence. And sitting right there in that silence is Curtis. He is practically living in the hospital, keeping a full-time vigil by her side. On the surface, it's romantic and deeply loyal. But underneath, I think we are witnessing profound, paralyzing survivor's guilt and helplessness. Curtis is an action guy. He is used to fixing things, investigating things, fighting his way out of corners. Sitting in a sterile room, listening to the rhythmic beeping of monitors, entirely powerless to help the woman he loves, that is its own kind of psychological torture. He is waiting for a miracle, and in the meantime, he is effectively putting his own life on pause. Now, we need to talk about Britt, because I feel like her storyline is the most suffocating, claustrophobic nightmare of them all. Britt is carrying a secret that could literally get her killed, and she is trying to issue a subtle, desperate warning likely to Lulu without triggering her own execution. The man walking around with Nathan's face, living Nathan's life, isn't Nathan. It's Cassius, Britt's brother. This is just my interpretation, but the psychological horror of identity theft on this intimate of a scale is staggering. Imagine looking at someone who has the exact face, the voice, the mannerisms of someone you deeply respected, but knowing that behind those eyes is a predator. It's the uncanny valley brought to life. Cassius isn't just pretending to be Nathan. He is actively desecrating Nathan's memory by occupying his space in the world. Britt knows exactly who he is, and she knows what he is capable of. The fact that Cassius is her brother adds a layer of toxic family dynamics that is hard to stomach. Sibling bonds are complicated, but when one sibling is a lethal threat to the other, survival instincts have to override blood. Britt wants to scream the truth from the rooftops. She wants to protect Lulu, who is likely getting dangerously close to this imposter. But Britt knows that if she blows Cassius's cover, he will end her. He won't hesitate. I think Britt is living every single second in a state of hypervigilance, trying to play 4D chess with a psychopath. Her warning to Lulu won't be direct. It will be coded, panicked, and heavily veiled, leaving us to wonder if Lulu is perceptive enough to catch the lifeline Britt is throwing her. Finally, let's analyse the collision course between Turner, Sonny, and the looming threat of Sidwell. Turner has done the legwork. He has dug into the shadows and brought Sonny actionable clues and intelligence regarding Sidwell's operations. Turner's goal is straightforward: legal justice. He wants to compile enough evidence to throw Sidwell in a federal penitentiary before Sidwell can launch whatever catastrophic attack he is planning against Sonny's empire. But this is where the fundamental difference between a law enforcement mindset and a mob boss mindset creates a massive roadblock. I think Sonny looks at Turner's evidence and sees nothing but circumstantial paper trails that a high-priced defense attorney could shred in 5 minutes. In Sonny's world, you don't rely on the district attorney to eliminate a threat. You rely on absolute, undeniable proof that justifies a permanent, street-level solution. Sonny feels that Turner's clues aren't enough to act on decisively. He needs to know the exact who, what, when, and where of Sidwell's attack before he moves. Despite Sonny dismissing the immediate tactical value of the evidence, there is an undeniable shift in the dynamic between him and Turner. Sonny is deeply paranoid right now, isolated and waiting for an attack. Turner stepping up, risking his own neck to investigate Sidwell, proves a level of loyalty that Sonny desperately craves. And then the tension snaps. I could be wrong, but the leap from discussing mob evidence to ending up in bed together is a classic trauma response. It's not necessarily about profound romantic love in that specific moment. It's about adrenaline. It's about two people operating in a high-stress, life-or-death environment where the threat of violence acts as an intense aphrodisiac. Sonny is grateful, yes, but he is also seeking a visceral release from the crushing pressure of being a target. Turner is drawn to the power and the danger. In my opinion, this hookup is less of a romantic milestone and more of a messy, complicated collision of fear, gratitude, and raw survival instinct. It complicates their professional alliance immensely and throws yet another volatile element into a town that is currently drowning in secrets, blackmail, and chemical warfare. Every corner of Port Charles right now is built on a foundation of lies, and I feel like we are just waiting for the first match to be struck. I cannot wait to see how these psychological pressure cookers explode.